Sargon of Akkad founded history's first true empire. The Akkadian Empire established many precedents that later Mesopotamian empires would follow. Themes of power, megalomania, and more can be observed in Akkad's rise and fall. These recurring themes have been witnessed and recorded throughout the world and across time. In the age before Sargon of Akkad, the world he would be born into had been dominated by the Sumerian civilization for 1,000 years. A network of more than 50 independent city-states saturated southern Mesopotamia in what was, by far, the most densely populated region of the world at that time. They shared a common language, similar culture, and religious beliefs, but the Sumerians tended to hate each other with great intensity, often for trivial reasons. The rivalry among these quarrelsome city-states gradually intensified throughout the 3rd millennium BC. Eventually, a series of powerful cities, including Uruk, Lagash, and then Umma, rose up to form large kingdoms, and then vassalize most of their neighbors. Lugal-Zaggisi of Umma was the last native Sumerian king to dominate the land of Sumer before Sargon. Umma had been hardened by more than 100 years of conflict with the neighboring city-state of Lagash. Lagash was previously the top dog in the region. They had humiliated and subjugated the people of Umma. Under Lugal-Zaggisi, Umma finally got its revenge and conquered Lagash, and then went on to conquer Uruk and the other great cities of southern Mesopotamia. Lugal-Zaggisi set up Uruk as his capital city and then moved north to conquer the city of Kish. Kish was the most powerful city-state near the narrow choke point between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, and controlled a large swath of land in the region. During Lugal-Zaggisi's lifetime, he was possibly the greatest conqueror in human history. And if things had played out slightly different, this video would be about him, Umma, and his people, instead of Sargon and the Akkadians. The Akkadians were descended from nomadic peoples who settled in central Mesopotamia. Many of them moved south and assimilated into the dominant Sumerian culture, while preserving their own distinct language. Sharukan, or Sargon as he is more commonly known today, was descended from these new people in the region, which is one of the few near contemporary facts we know about him and his rise to power. Other facts include he was the son of a commoner. He became cupbearer to the king of Kish, and later became king of Kish and conquered a big empire. In the Sumerian kings list, it states that Sargon's father was a gardener. This is often interpreted as his father was a date farmer, a common profession in the region. The most mysterious portion of Sargon's mysterious life is how he rose to be the cupbearer to the king of Kish, Ur-Zababa. In a much later legend, Sargon was a gardener that the goddess of love and war, Inanna, chose to favor and aid his rise to be the king's cupbearer. But I am sure the real story lost to time is much more complicated and interesting on how Sargon managed to rise to the level of serving drinks. While not sounding super impressive, being a cupbearer to a king in the ancient world was a very high-ranking position in society. The trusted position made sure the king's drinks weren't poisoned. Also, because of the cupbearer's proximity and familiarity to the king, he also usually acted as a close advisor. According to a later Sumerian legend, Sargon told Ur-Zababa he had a dream of the king drowning in a river of red bodily fluids. Ur-Zababa really didn't like Sargon's dream, so he plotted to have him killed. Ur-Zababa's genius plan was to have Sargon deliver a tablet to Lugal-Zaggisi, who was on the way north with his army. The tablet pretty much said, "Do me a favor and unalive this guy for me." This plan failed spectacularly. The surviving tablet with this narrative is heavily damaged, but when the story picks up again, Sargon is king of Kish. So, we can reasonably assume that Lugal-Zaggisi and Sargon teamed up to overthrow Ur-Zababa, and that Lugal-Zaggisi made Sargon his vassal king, which was probably a huge mistake, because after Sargon was well established in Kish, he successfully rebelled and then went on the attack. In the Battle of Uruk, Sargon captured Lugal-Zaggisi, bound him in a collar, and brought him to the Temple of Enlil in the Sumerian holy city of Nippur. and old Lugal's Agsi probably met a very unpleasant fate there. Afterwards, the city walls of Uruk were demolished, in order to deter future rebellion by making the city much harder to defend. Sargon then went on to conquer the rest of the Sumerian city-states. Around this time, the city of Akkad was established as the new capital city and base of operations for the Akkadians. Which is a good thing, because Sargon of Kish just doesn't have the right sound to it. The precise location of the city is currently unknown, but we do know it was near the cities of Kish and Sippar. So, in between them is a safe bet on its approximate location. Most scholars today believe Akkad was a pre-existing minor settlement that was built into a grand capital city by Sargon, who likely wanted to dwell in a city populated by his own kinsmen. From there, Sargon went on to conquer all of northern Mesopotamia. Not content with this vast swath of territory, his army crossed the Euphrates River and conquered as far as the Mediterranean Sea in the west. Sargon's armies also campaigned as far as the cedar forests in the mountains of Anatolia in the north, the Levant in the southwest, and throughout the Zagros Mountains, where they defeated numerous tribes of mountain men. In the east, the Akkadians vassalized Sumer's longtime enemy, Elam. They even organized some of the first naval expeditions in history, exploring the Gulf to their south, and likely doing a little plundering along the way. However, any significant Akkadian control in these remote regions that featured difficult terrain was tenuous and slight at best. In Mesopotamia, Akkadian control was more direct. Akkadian governors were appointed to administer cities, local tax collectors, and vassal kings. At Sargon's court in Akkad, it is recorded that 5,400 men ate bread before him daily. Some interpret this as possible evidence for a professional corps of warriors that the majority conscript army was built around. One of Sargon's greatest accomplishments was non-military. He undertook a series of infrastructure projects to unite the irrigation systems of the individual city-states into a more efficient and more unified system. This led to a massive agricultural surplus throughout Mesopotamia, which consequently led to greater prosperity and a population that rapidly grew. In addition to controlling the physical world, Sargon also sought to consolidate control over the empire's spiritual life as well. He promoted the goddess Inanna throughout the empire, and appointed his daughter Enheduanna as the high priestess of Inanna at a lavishly built temple in the city of Ur. Enheduanna has the distinction of being widely recognized as the earliest known named author in world history. She signed her name to several temple hymns she composed for various deities in the Sumerian pantheon. When Sargon reached old age, the large population of the empire rose up against him, and in later accounts, they even besieged the capital city of Akkad. Despite his old age, Sargon went out one last time with his army and crushed dissent throughout Mesopotamia, before breathing his last breath and fading into the world of myth and legend. More than 1,700 years after his death, the ancient Mesopotamians were still writing about his exploits and creating their own fan fiction about his life and his adventures with the goddess Ishtar, as Inanna was later conflated with. Sargon's son, Rimush of Akkad, succeeded him to the throne. His reign began just how his father's ended, with Sumerian revolt. Rimush successfully crushed these rebellions. Based on soil samples from the region, modern scholars have hypothesized that salinization of the soil, exacerbated by over-irrigation, led to poor harvests and food shortages. Throughout history, the number one cause of civil unrest has always been a hungry tummy. And unfortunately, for Sargon's descendants, this appears to have been a reoccurring problem. During his 9-year-long reign, Rimush spent most of his time focused on consolidating and stabilizing the inner core of the empire. He sometimes destroyed entire city-states and brutally put down rebellions in Mesopotamia. Meticulous records have survived for some of the slaughters he carried out there. One notable campaign Rimush waged outside Mesopotamia was to reconquer Elam. Later Babylonian tradition had it that Rimush was turned to mush by an assassin. His brother, who I am sure no one suspected at all, succeeded him to the throne. Manish-Tushu not only had a much longer name than Ramush, but he had a much longer reign as well. After Ramush, no one felt like rebelling when his brother took the throne. Manish-Tushu, in typical Akkadian fashion, when not at war at home, he went and started one someplace else. He conquered the city of Anshan to the southeast of Susa. According to one of his inscriptions, he sailed a fleet along the Gulf where a coalition of 32 kings allied to fight against him. They were all defeated, their cities sacked, and silver mines looted. He also boasted of trading with 37 nations, which seems to indicate an economic resurgence during his reign. But all stable times come to an end. Like his brother, later Babylonian tradition had it that Manish-Tushu was decommissioned ahead of schedule, this time by his own court. He was replaced by his son, Naram-Sin, who I'm sure no one suspected of having anything to do with the palace coup. Naram-Sin of Akkad had a very eventful reign. His 37-year-long rule was typified by external conquest, repeating many of his grandfather's campaigns, and internal revolt. The chronology of Naram-Sin's reign is a matter of scholarly debate. It is difficult to tell for certain whether conquest came before major revolt broke out, or widespread revolt preceded conquest, or the Great Revolt happened in between different campaigns of conquest. In any case, the defining event of Naram-Sin's reign was a massive revolt. Multiple coalitions of city-states, led by the kings of Kish and Uruk, rose up and attacked Akkad. From a surviving contemporary inscription, Naram-Sin claims to have been victorious in 9 battles in just 1 year. According to him, the people of Akkad were so impressed and grateful for his protection that they implored that he be made a living god and worshipped. He was made patron god of the city of Akkad, and a new temple was built there for his worship. Afterwards, he also made Sargon and his father gods, but not his uncle Ramush. Previously, only a few Sumerian kings had been deified posthumously, but Naram-Sin was the first Mesopotamian king to make himself a living god. He was portrayed as wearing a horned helmet, which in the culture had been reserved for only deities. Akkadian kings before him held the title Kishatum, meaning king of the world. But being a reasonable man, he determined that that title no longer fit his exalted status. Consequently, Naram-Sin declared himself king of the 4 quarters of the universe. Whether before, after, or on either side of his unprecedented apoplectic apotheosis, Naram-Sin proved himself as a competent commander, campaigning continuously throughout his reign. Like Sargon, he crossed the Euphrates River and conquered the northern Levant. From there, he campaigned into Anatolia. In the east, he defeated several mountain kingdoms in the Zagros Mountains, notably the Lulubi, in order to secure the empire's eastern border. Like his father, he was also a sailor. Naram-Sin sailed as far as the land of Magan, where he claims to have vassalized the local lords there. At minimum, the expedition successfully raided and/or secured the supply of trade and resources from the southeastern Arabian Peninsula. In addition to the army, Naram-Sin also fathered an army of many children, which he used to control the empire. He made several of his sons governors to control key cities, and he appointed several of his daughters to high priestesses of prominent cults in southern Mesopotamia. To help the empire's economy run more efficiently, Naram-Sin introduced a standard system of weights and measures, and also further enforced the use of Akkadian instead of Sumerian for the scribal class. Despite his constant military success, best efforts at centralization, and his divine status upgrade, the empire showed signs of severe instability. While Akkad focused on keeping the south in line, Akkad's northern vassals were free to raid and attack each other with zero intervention from the central government. Naram-Sin also had to make some not-so-divine deals in order to protect the empire's borders. He married off one of his daughters to a minor vassal king in the north, and one of his sons to the Marhashi to the east of Elam. In Elam, Naram-Sin signed an alliance treaty with his own Akkadian governor. In the surviving treaty, the governor referred to himself as Strong One, a Mesopotamian title equivalent to king, instead of Ensi, the Akkadian term for governor. When Naram-Sin finally descended into the dirt, along with the rest of the regular humans that lived before him, his empire was barely holding itself together. In his lifetime, He achieved a more exalted status than Sargon did during his lifetime. However, in contrast to Sargon, he would not be remembered well by later Mesopotamians, and in fact, he became a reviled cautionary tale about pride and was blamed for the empire's later collapse. He was succeeded by his son, Shar-Kali-Shari. During his long reign, similar themes as Naram-Sin's reign played out. He put down internal revolts in Mesopotamia and fought against the mountain men in the Zagros, including his Elamite vassals who successfully rebelled and had to be reconquered. Like his father, he also crossed the Euphrates River and campaigned against the Amorites who were migrating into the region. From there, he crossed into Anatolia, where he chopped down cedar trees. And brought them back to Akkad as trophies of war. The cedar wood was used to adorn or furnish a temple to the empire's patron goddess, Inanna. Shar-Kali-Shari must have loved temples because he built a whole bunch of them. Or he may have been attempting to curry favor with the celestial host of deities during the tough times. If so, it didn't work too well. The vast amount of wealth spent on his many building projects probably could have been better spent on the defense of the crumbling empire's borders. When Shar-Kali-Shari died, the empire descended into chaos, anarchy, and foreign invasion by the Gutians and the Amorites. A destabilized Akkad was ruled by 4 kings in 4 years, Igigi Imi Nana Manalulu. Despite their funny-sounding names and how short they reigned, we really don't know much of anything about Igigi, Imi, Nanam, and Ilulu. After their 4 diminutive reigns, things got serious when Dudu took the throne. Dudu stabilized the pile of duplicity and discord he had inherited. Akkad was reduced to little more than a city-state premium package, with the weakened vassals expansion pack. Throughout Dudu's long, sad reign, he continuously campaigned in southern Mesopotamia and Elam, with some limited short-term success, but he ultimately failed in reviving the dying empire. His son, Shuturul, succeeded Dudu to the throne. Not much is known about his 15-year-long reign, other than that the last remnant of the empire was overthrown by invading Gutians. The Gutians became the premier power in Mesopotamia for a few decades before being driven out by the resurgent Sumerians. A generation before, the Akkadians had campaigned and plundered the homes of the mountain men. Eventually, the descendants of those wronged showed up and destroyed the home of the false god kings of Akkad. The idols in the temple of Naram-Sin could not hear the lamentations of the Akkadians, and the high priestesses could do nothing to aid their people. The site of Akkad was known to later generations in the region, and at times there seems to have been a fortress there, and later a cult center. However, as generations passed, the site faded into obscurity and was eventually forgotten, never to be found again as of the making of this video. Maybe one of you watching will find it one day. Well, that would be pretty cool. Hello there, this is Epimetheus. I hope you enjoyed the video. In case you're unfamiliar with me, I'm a one-man team. I spent hundreds of hours on this video, researching, writing, recording the audio, editing, and drawing 208 new drawings for this video. If you appreciate the human effort and handmade content, you can help me out in many ways. You can click the like button, leave a comment, share a link to this video with your family and friends, and only if you're really financially stable enough in these tough times, you can help me out with $1 or more, like these wonderful people did. Thank you so much for watching and supporting, even making it to the end of the video helps me a lot by supporting me doing what I love to do. Thank you so very much.